People, like systems, spend time, energy, money on protecting their own accumulated interests rather than forging ahead toward their own original goals. How many times have very good projects got started, and over time you see the project or even the person gets bogged down in just protecting what they've gained, so their original ideals have stopped. You know how many writers I know that after they got their first book published stopped trying to be creative and started doing writing they knew would get published instead of what they wanted to write about? I have friends who are artists who don't do their own art. Instead, they do what art will be sold. I have a friend who is now living down in Texas. Her name is Brenda Baskin. Brenda was sitting here a year ago in a meeting like many of you. She weighed, I'm guessing, about close to 275 pounds. She was very angry. She was very bitter. And part of it was she is a very successful art director of one of America's largest advertising agencies. Financially, very successful. Career, very successful. By her peers, top rung. A get-the-job-done person. But she had no life. You called her at 8 in the morning, she was at work. Called her 11 at night, she was at work. On the weekend, doing her work. But it wasn't her work she was doing. She was doing other people's work. Even when she disagreed with it, she still had to do it. You can't tell a client at one of these agencies, I don't like your product, it's an unhealthy product, I cannot do something that's allowing other people to buy it. I'm then responsible for other people taking something in their system that is unhealthy for them. And she knew that. So finally she just said enough, and she quit. It took her 6 months of preparing for her journey. And now she's lost that weight, she's a different human being. She is light, she is happy, the child is out and is playing. She's not in an imbalanced or dysfunctional place. She's very functional and very balanced. And she's doing the art that she wants to do. She's doing crafts that she wants to do, and she even changed her career. She's now becoming a chiropractor because she knew all along that she had some inner desire, but her limits were that you're not lovable, you're not good enough, and as a result, she never thought she could be a healer. But when she opened herself up and took away the power and control others had to set her limits, she set her limits way back there. And within her limits was that she could be a healer. And now she's in school, in college, again, to be a healer. But on her terms. It's her life, no one else's. And that's what you got to understand. It's your life. You have to set the standards. So I'm always wary of organizations and groups that have some great ideal initially, but then get stopped when they have some success or acceptance, and all they do is protect that. Look at medicine. Year after year, I do lectures before groups of physicians and graduate students, New York Medical College and other places. And how many times have I told these people? I was just the commencement speaker about a week ago, and in fact, it was a week ago Saturday, for, I don't know, there were about 2,200 people and about 105 graduates at this ceremony. And I said, I'm going to tell you two things. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, and I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And I told them it was a very strong message. It was not what they expected. But then again, they didn't invite me because I was going to give them, you know, the kind of, they had Ross Perot and others that, you know, the faculty wanted, and the students wanted me to come. And the faculty said, you can't invite Gary Null. He's unpredictable. You know, he might say something we don't want to hear. And the student says, that's exactly the point. We're no longer students. We're now going out to become physicians. We want to hear from someone who's going to be honest with us and not just sharing their own prejudice and their own limited views. And so I gave it to them. One message was for the family of these graduates, and I let them know what they were expecting. And I started right off. How many people did I know who were ideals? They visualized themselves as Albert Schweitzers and helping people and spending one day a week doing free work in the community. And then comes the money, and then comes the social commitments, and then society weaves you into its fabric. You become a part of the country club set, and you become a part of the in-group, and you begin to change your image of yourself. You start seeing yourself rising above the other people. Your image, you're no longer like them or us. You change your vocabulary. You start to talk in medical ease, like legalese. You start to dress differently. You can afford better, so you buy better. You live different. You live in your own secluded and sequestered places. You have friends of convenience. Nobody's honest in that environment, but they're all self-protecting. And I ask, before you start buying these expensive suits and the expensive lifestyles, to which you then must honor the bills that you have got to pay for, ask yourself, would you rather have less money and less material things and more freedom to express and experience, to explore, to learn how to really become a physician? You only learn half of what you need to do about anything in college. The best that any degree in any specialization can help you is only half learned. The other half comes when you go out and experience life. And I said, now you have a chance to experience life. You have a chance to learn about holistic medicine and holistic healing and the environment and the mind and body-mind connection. Now you have a chance to learn real information, not what a Department of Pharmacology has taught you because they got $1 million grant from a pharmaceutical foundation. No, now you can learn what's real. And you can see them thinking, but then they get sucked into that. And now they got to pay for it. I had a friend who was an author, and for 5 years, when he wasn't published and I wasn't published, every day we'd spend time running around this city. We didn't have a nickel between us, but we were exploring everything and having fun in the process and all the things. And we wrote a lot of screenplays and plays and short stories. And then we began to each get published. And what I noticed was, and it was a slow process, he changed the way he would talk with people and changed the way he had his apartment and changed access to himself. And then when I'd call and say, let's go away for the weekend, we'll go down to Amish country and talk with some of the Mennonites or others. And, well, I can't. I got to work. Why you got to work? Well, I got a contract, and I've just moved into a new apartment, a co-op, and I got this bill. Well, within 5 years, he couldn't spend 5 minutes a week doing anything. He'd become a prisoner to his own success. He had no freedom. Now, for a writer, for a person who had a free spirit, for a person who wanted to explore human dynamics, he had to write pulp. He was reduced to writing cheap romance novels in order to pay his bills. But the demon was eating away. You see, he had compromised his integrity. He had compromised his dream. Never compromise your dream. Never. It's your dream. Keep its integrity intact. And 100,000 people will tell you, well, you got to compromise, you got to compromise, you got to compromise. You do not have to compromise. And the moment you do, you no longer have a dream. You no longer have freedom. You've already have the self-imposed limits. So again, if your purpose in becoming free and starting over is just to get successful again and have a whole new set of burdens, it'll happen. The whole idea this time is to have a different ideal to work for. The American dream is a nightmare. It doesn't work. Look at the values society places. And who's right? They're the majority. They tell you not to question authority. As a result, they allow wars to occur without looking at the issues. And the issues are always politically skewed to those who are committing to the war. They tell you that drugs are a problem, yet never once has any politician in power or any agency of the government addressed why people want drugs to begin with. All their money and energy goes after getting the dealers. They know that you can't get all the dealers, and they know that in the world we live in, the moment you get one dealer, another 1,000 are taking its place. So it's a game, but they know it's the game. But nobody asks, what is missing in your life? What is so painful in your life? Why are you so angry that you would have to have a drug to replace something that should be naturally there? Because healthy people don't ever take drugs. It is only in your dysfunctional state that you do abusive things. Look, let's face it. If you really love yourself and you look in the mirror and you like what you see and you're honoring what you're seeing, are you going to say, I love myself so much, I'm going to eat 10 pounds of sugar this week. I'm going to make hypoglycemia and migraine headaches and constipation. I'm going to create so much gas no one's going to be able to want to be around me. I'm going to float up in the elevator. No, you're not going to want to do that. I want to have zits on my face and on my butt. I want to have body odor from eating pork. I'm just going to sit and eat all the pork ribs I can. I'm going to sit in front of a television with a big bowl of ice cream, and I'm going to have cookies in it, and I'm going to watch stupid sitcoms that I'm not even going to laugh at, and I'm going to just sit there and... No, you don't do that. Not if you're happy, right? But that's what the average person does. So talk with the average person, and like these televisions, what do you think of the war on, you know, yeah, oh, that's good. You support it. Yeah, damn right. More, kill him. So I don't believe in consensus, because consensus has never been right. And I don't accept the reality that people have to live their life that way, because that's a wasted life. Now, someone's going to pay for that wasted life. First, the person pays, but then I pay. You get sick, my taxes go up to pay for an $800 billion medical bill. You don't pay attention to the environment you live in, you allow others to pollute it. Now, I got to breathe from a factory that you could have complained about, stop, because you're not concerned about air pollution or water pollution or soil pollution. You're not looking at why families are dysfunctional, which causes kids to go out and commit crimes and be antisocial and resent authority figures. As a result, I have to pay for the burden that society has to put on us for that. You see, we all pay for others' dysfunction. So it's not as if people have dysfunction that doesn't affect other people. We are living in an integrated society. So make a new ideal. Forget the American dream. Let's face it, look at the American dream. Our economy works when you spend money. So go out and spend your life savings. Get us away from this recession. Now, I realize that you're not spending money because you don't have confidence in us. Why shouldn't you? We've run up a $400 billion interest budget. We're $3 trillion in debt, and we can't close that. Half of the federal employees are just there because of patronage jobs, and we know we bought the vote for next election when we allowed them in office. We could cut away half of all federal, state, and local employees and get a better work done. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to put up with the game. Now, if you spend all your money so you have nothing left in your savings account, that helps people who need to sell you products that you didn't need to begin with. Now you have products you don't need, but you don't have anything in the savings account, and then we're going to encourage people to come in and take over your corporation. Now you don't have a retirement and a pension fund. Now you're out of work. Now you've got to apply for unemployment. We've got to give you more unemployment, so we've got to tax people more to have more unemployment tax. Why? Because we encourage you not to save. Doesn't make sense when you think about it, does it? Why can't someone say, why not minimalism? Why not reduce the gross national product? Where is it written that we succeed only when the gross national product increases? Why not go to a different form of economy, where barter is accepted, where services and fees are based upon sharing as a part of the currency? Why not look at what we can live with less? Because every ad, every commercial, every message, all your life is more. Bigger house. You got this house, not good enough. It's spring, a new fashion. What was wrong last spring? What's out of fashion? For everybody? Well, yes, for everybody. You don't want to wear last year's fashion. Why not? Well, because you're not hip. I got to be hip to be accepted? Of course. If you're not hip, you're not accepted. No one's going to pay attention to you if you don't have on the right fashion, live in the right house, go to the right school. Why do I have to go to Columbia? It's very expensive. Or Harvard. Very expensive. Well, because that's a part of your ego. Well, can I go to a state university and get the same education? Well, of course you can, but we're not going to give you that impression. You see, part of what we're doing is we're designing an ego, an elitist concept, because if you go to a certain school, then you're going to have a certain desire to, in all the other areas of your life, to manifest that you're a better person than everybody else. Look at the games that people play on us, but they don't allow us in on the game. Never. And the authority figures. How many women in the 60s and 70s had PMS and were told that it didn't exist? Had Candida and were told that it didn't exist? Now there are drugs to treat Candida and PMS, and suddenly it's a legitimate disease in medicine. Well, it's not a disease, it's an imbalance that can be corrected, but no one's got around yet to telling you the natural way of correcting it, because no one profits from it. When they can profit from it, it'll become a naturally treatable disease. That's the game. What about people who can feel better with less? Those are dangerous people to this economy. You see the game? So they keep selling you the myth that what you have is not enough. I'm suggesting that everything you have is too much. And we've got to de-emphasize so we have more freedom. After all, what's the whole point? My friend doesn't own a house. But for half of his career, all of his friends were working so they could own a house, own possessions. They worked to own something. Their careers and jobs were done solely to provide a standard of living which was to enhance their ego and therefore show that they were okay. They didn't live. He can go anywhere and does. Any given day of the week, he can do what he wants to do. Now, he does not have a big home. He has an apartment. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't need one. But also what he doesn't have a big bank account, but he has no debt. And let's face it, if you had a choice right now to have no savings, but to have no debt, which would you choose? More income but big debt, or lower income and no debt? To have a big house and everything we're supposed to have and be a prisoner to it, or to have none of that and be free to explore your life. After all, don't you realize the whole idea of starting over is to realize we can give up everything we've got and feel good about it. I gave up my apartment after 20 years of living in it. I didn't want it. I didn't want the responsibility of it. Gave it up. Gave up a house. Didn't want it. Gave it up. Anything that causes me to spend more attention and time on it than I do on myself, I give up. That's a radical approach. But the most important thing in the world to me is freedom. To realize that you're supposed to be living a life, making a life, not just a career. And how many baby boomers, all they have is a career. They don't have a life. All they can do when they talk to you is tell you what they own, or what they're buying, or what they're working for. They can't tell you what they've done to enjoy it. And they can't tell you what they've enjoyed without their money. Let them tell you how they made a great meal for friends. They can. They'll tell you about going to an expensive French restaurant. Let them tell you about going out and spending a month at an archaeological dig in Israel. They can't. But they'll tell you about how they went on a $10,000 a month cruise, but did business all the while and wrote it off. We've learned the wrong lessons. We've learned everything is for something to enhance how we feel and look and are perceived. Do you realize how many of the things you do each day are done so other people will continue to accept you? Think of that for a moment. How many things in your life each day do you do to maintain your image in the eyes of other people? From the way you dress, to how you respond to them, to the way you act, to the deeds you do. How much of it is for their acceptance? That's what you've got to let go of. Do you consider your problems more important than the larger ideals of your life? You cannot start over until you put your life in perspective. We spend too much time in our own minds. We worry about things that are irrelevant to the larger issue of our life. I was speaking with a man this morning who said, I had to steal to support my lifestyle because I'm letting my family down. I said, I think you got it wrong. I think stealing is letting someone down, the people you stole from. But I'm afraid to let go of what I own because my image of myself as being the right father and the right husband and the right person in the community is based upon what I can show the public. This man came from a dysfunctional background. This man came from an abusive background, and instead of living in the here and now and trusting that he's okay, he trusted the old image he was not okay because he's been motivated by a need to continue to reinforce every day that he's okay by, here's how much money I made. You can go to camp. We can take those lessons. You can buy a new dress. We can take a vacation to Cancun. How'd you make the money? Well, I had to lie. I had to cheat. I had to steal. Something's wrong with that. When you need something so bad that you can't live without it, then you shouldn't live with it. And you should start to ask yourself, what is more important in your life? The higher ideal of life or your immediate problems? Because if you can't get out of your immediate problems, then you're not going to seek a higher ideal. There's not going to be any room for it. It's going to be competing. Oh yeah, Gary, I'll get around to spiritual growth. I'll get around to emotional growth. I'll get around to loving and nurturing and bonding. I'll get around doing some service to society. I'll get around to helping other human beings when I get rid of some of the current problems. Trouble is, that kind of addictive, compulsive personality never gets rid of problems. All they do is they'll replace it with another problem. Haven't you ever seen that? Person works on one problem, gets rid of it, and boom, there's another one. That's what happens when you've got any form of addictive personality. You're merely sublimating one for another. You just got to let it go. I said, let your house go. It's just so much square foot. Isn't that what it is? The reality is a house is just so many square feet. All right? Is your life more important than 1,600 or 2,000 square feet? You got a whole world. You got millions of people that you can interrelate with and see and experiences and places to be. Who says that you got to spend every ounce of your energy protecting that square footage? Think of how much a life is wasted guarding that investment. Where's the higher ideal? So I said, let it go. Well, if I let it go, I mean, I'm not going to be perceived by my family as being a provider. So tell them you're not a provider. I'm not a provider. You're all teenagers, and we have to provide for each other. We have to provide differently. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means we can't have the same things. Let's find ways that we can make life interesting without having the same thing. Think of the de-stressing process if you rented instead of bought. Think that if you started working on your life and not just your job. Think if you had the freedom to experience other people and cultures and places, even in this city, instead of being a prisoner and living by the I can'ts, I don't have, or when then. Well, when that happens, when I get my debt, then I'll change. When then doesn't work. It's the biggest excuse imaginable. Let it go. I don't care what it is. Just get rid of it. It's just things. How many things in this life have you thought were so important in the moment, and later you realized they were just things? Yesterday I was crossing the street, and I saw someone I used to know and was very friendly with. An old friend. And this is a friend who was a friend for about 14 years. And this friend said to me, and I remember all the times that we were together, oh, you're my, good friend, and nothing will ever stand in the way of our friendship, and, it's so unconditional and so exciting. But this friend also I knew, and she knew, needed a relationship, a permanent one, because every day her mother was on the phone, did you meet Mr. Wright? And she met this guy, and she got married. Now, she's afraid to even say hello on the street for fear that, well, he might get jealous. Why? Well, what about all your freedom? You were going to explore, and you were going to grow, and you were going to go back to school, and you were going to be a designer and an illustrator. Well, we're having a family. No, your mother's having a family. Your father's having a family. Everyone around you's having a family. You're just a breeding stock. That's what I should have told her, but she wasn't going to listen to anything, and I didn't want to impose that upon her. But that was the reality. She has no life now. What she has is a false sense of security. But also somewhere in her, she's had to learn how to take the pain that she stopped actualizing her dreams, and she's put that somewhere else. Somewhere she is sublimating. Anyone who's not actualizing their real life is sublimating. Everyone. Power controls instead of serving. How does power serve or control your needs? Look at how power affects you in all areas of your life, all areas. Because where power is not serving your needs, it is controlling your needs. I don't honor anyone else's power or control in my life. I do not honor any authority beyond myself. I will listen to other people, but I will not allow them to have greater control in my life than I do of myself. Think of what would happen in your lives if you had the same position. You'll listen, but you're not going to automatically knee-jerk something because someone says to, because they're authority or they have power or control.